Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. We've got a great guest for you today, and his name is Barry. And I got to tell you, Barry, that we didn't talk about this beforehand because I have got one of two or three ways that I could pronounce your last name, and I always get it wrong. So I thought perhaps I would diffuse the situation and have you give me your last name so that I don't screw it up.
So you're going to diffuse and defer to me. So the name is LaBov. It sounds like above with an L in front of it. And there are at least 4 other ways to pronounce that name. And I don't want to go into it to blow our minds, but it's LaBov.
I think that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's actually pretty easy because LaBov makes a great deal of sense. And you are in charge of a company that, surprisingly enough, it has your last name. And why would it? What a miracle that you could be working for a company that had your last name and everything.
Yeah, I just walked into it and I thought, I feel like I must belong here. And it's, for 40 some years, it seems to have worked out.
Since you were 10?
Yes, since I was 10 years old.
Wow, you're an entrepreneur like no other.
I'm a legend in my own mind.
I wouldn't say that. You've got a pretty extensive team that works with you, and you do all kinds of stuff. Can you tell our audience specifically what it is that you do and how it's important to all of us?
I think it's really important. Our company focuses on one thing, and it's differentiation. We believe that you need to differentiate your brand, whether you're a small company, a large company. You need to identify what makes you distinct, not necessarily superior, Kevin, distinct, unique. What's your personality? What makes you who you are? And then here's what I love, and this fits your show so well. The first thing you do before you launch it to the world is you celebrate it with the most important people, your employees, and anyone else that supports or represents your brand. So I think it's incredibly uplifting and very important to people because it gives them meaning and significance.
And in the workplace, meaning and significance of all the players is really important. How come more businesses don't take that attitude?
I think more are beginning to. I think 20, 30 years ago, when I would work with a client and say, hey, before we launch your brand, because we're doing all this cool stuff and we found what you do unique and it's very exciting, let's celebrate it with your employees. And I'd say most of them way back then would say, hey, they're making $5 an hour. They need to keep their head down and work. Today, I say the same thing, and those great leaders tear up and say, look, that's the most important thing to me. I need to retain these people. I need to have them feel like what they're doing is important. I need them to care about the quality. So today, I think it's actually a little more obvious that you need to get that engagement level up.
It amazes me that people, I'm not going to put it into all business owners, but there are some who think that people are replaceable. And if you can't do the job the way that I want it done, I'll get somebody else to do it. But companies, to my mind, are like kind of they develop a personality, and there's a whole culture that is developed. And a lot of times that's not necessarily driven from the top. It's driven from all the people that work there. And is that true, or am I just making that up?
No, I think it does. I think you can have a brand new leader and he or she can walk in and there already is a culture. Now that brand new leader can try to influence it, but you have decades and decades and decades of people working together, doing things a certain way, and that is the culture. And a lot of really interesting leaders have come in to change cultures and have failed. And some wonderful leaders have come in and embraced that culture and maybe, nurtured it a little bit, but really looked at it and said, what we have here is special. There are a few things we can change, but let's look at this from a really positive standpoint and make it the best it has ever been.
And I would look at it from, if I was somebody that was applying to be like a CEO or a CFO or something like that, that would be one of the questions I would ask, would be, what's the culture here? How
Mhm.
do I fit into the culture? How can I enhance the culture without doing a bunch of changes to it and causing all sorts of havoc and everybody hates me all of a sudden?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of times leaders are brought in, Kevin, to change things. So they're brought in to fix it. They're brought in to make a little more money. They're brought in to get rid of this issue. They're brought in to relaunch something. And very seldom are they brought in to maintain something. They're brought in because, well, we've got a need and we've got to get that thing fixed. So I agree with you. I think it's a challenge, but your culture is one of your greatest assets because it's all about your people.
Yeah. Now, when you guys walk into a business, when somebody hires you and they say, Barry, I want you to come in and look at what I'm doing, look at what we're doing, and give us a idea of how we can do it better. What steps do you take to do all that?
We have 5 steps, and that's one of our differentiators at our company. We have a process that is 5 steps. 1 or 2 of those steps, nobody in the world does, at least to my knowledge, okay? But the rest of them are pretty common steps. The first thing we do is we listen, and that is we deal with human beings, and we talk with them, and we listen, and those human beings might be customers, they could be suppliers, employees, leaders, etc. So we listen and we try to understand what that company is about. It's not so much on a scale of 1 to 5, what do you think, such and such. What it is all about, tell me why you continue working here. Tell me what you don't want this company to ever change. So we do that as a first step. Our second step is completely unique, and that is a technical immersion. So whether it's a factory, a manufacturing facility, whether it's a technology center, whatever it is, we go in. My people who are technologists go in and they look at the technical aspects of what is going on. The way, let's say it's a manufacturer, a product is built, the technology in it, the processes, the procedures. We look for those unique things that we think are magic because we believe your brand lives inside your product. So if you create the iPhone and you look inside that and you determine what is going on in there, it's probably reflecting your brand. It's probably reflecting a very technological, creative, design influenced brand. So we go in and we go through the entire facility. We deal with the top people in manufacturing, design, service, whatever it is. And we are on the lookout. We are discovering, not creating, we are discovering the magic. After we do that, we go to our third step, which is we bring it all together. So we've talked to humans, and now we've looked at things, technology, whatever it is, and we come up with conclusions. We share them with our clients. We have what we call a jam session where we go back and forth and we challenge each other in a very healthy way, but on thoughts, on approaches. Is this really the right word? Is this really the right approach? And we come together with our conclusions as a team with the clients. Then it's time to create the execution, which is what many agencies do. They'll create logos and websites. The fifth step is the most exciting step, and that is when we launch it. And as I mentioned a few moments ago, we launch it and celebrate it to the employees. And if that company has dealers and distributors, they're next in line. We launch it to them. We want them to celebrate. We want them to know why this company did what it did. And Kevin, we want each of those individuals to know how important their role is in the success of this brand. That's what we do. And honestly, my goal, and I'll say this right here early in our show, I have a goal. I only have one goal in my life, and that is I want to inspire 1 million people with this message. And that is different than selling a million books. I'm not looking to sell a million books. I want to inspire a million hearts and souls with this message. And already, as an example, we have one client with 16,000 employees, and we're sharing this. Well, we're on our way to a million with 16,000 people there. We're going to help a sports team inspire its city. Well, that's hundreds of thousands of people that they're going to inspire. So that's what I want to do. It's a purely positive message based on distinctiveness, differentiation.
So you work primarily with companies who decide they want to be different, or companies that's kind of in their DNA and what they're already doing?
It's really neither. I work with companies that are undergoing a challenge, and they're not saying, "Hey, I want to be different," or "Hey, there's something in my DNA." They're going, "Look, we're kind of stammering and stuttering, and we're stuck, and we're not doing anything that we want. We're not growing. Things aren't good. We need some help." And we come in. And that's when we start to learn things. A lot of times there's a company and they've been in business for 100 years and they have morale issues. And they're going, I wish you could come in here and help us. We don't know what we're doing. We don't think we're doing anything good. And before I go in, I'll always say, well, you've been in business a century. Since you started your business, the Titanic has sunk. You've been through 2 world wars and 2 worldwide pandemics. So you know what? You're probably doing something good, and we'll find it. And we do. So people don't know what they're looking for, Kevin, because they're so close to it. It's just like with our children. We're so close to our kids, our children, that we don't see what they do that's great. That it's just the kid that irritates you or the kid that drops the food on the floor. And you go, why are you doing this? And then the teacher says, your son's a genius at such and such. And you go, no, he drops things on the floor. No, he's a genius. That's what we do with companies. We look at what is good and we really help their leaders accentuate it and turn that into a very, very exciting, historic situation.
Now, I have worked for several companies that are multi-generational, where you had the founder, the visionary, the guy that created it, and that may have been 100 years ago, and he's long gone. And his children, who were close to the founder, who understood his vision because they could talk to him, they were the next generation. And then as the generations go, it seems like the companies that I was working with, the 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 brain pool got diluted, and the vision that was there at the beginning, which made them successful, is now diluted with folks that have always been successful, and so they don't. Does that happen more than a lot?
You really said that so well. I love our clients that have been in business for over 100 years. What happens is the founder is generally not a super balanced person. Like I'm not really very balanced. I'm into it. I'm going for it. Go, let's try, let's do it. Yeah, blah, blah. Okay, and that's great. That's great. But then generation after generation, you don't have that type of personality throughout the family. You have people who are trying to protect what that kind of goofball, crazy founder did. And you go, I don't want to lose what we did. And, in some cases it's selfish. I don't want to lose my country club membership. But in other cases, it's built on pride. Look, I don't want to lose what Grandpa Fred did, and I don't want to diminish this. Well, you get into a very much a defensive posture. And many of these companies, we call them, and it's in my book, but we call them, well, how do I put this? We call them sleeping giants. And that's what they are. They're sleeping giants. They've been around forever. Their competitors do not want them to wake up. They want them to stay asleep, stay in that slumber, because they have so much potential. And what you mentioned, Kevin, is really interesting. Many times the founder, 20, 30, 40, 80 years ago, created something. And over the years, they've thrown it out. And sometimes it was a pretty darn good idea that could be dusted off, shined up, and really be successful again. So that's what we look for. And so it happens all the time with multi-generational families. It's a tough thing. by the way. I think it's one of the toughest things in the world to be a child of the founder or a child of the child of the child of the founder, because
Yeah.
it's never fair. You can't live up to what people think. And then if you do well, they think, well, you just were lucky and you got into it because of your family name. So it's a tough one.
Or if you're an innovator and you're in a company that has been there 100 years, and I'm sorry, sir, but we've always done it this way, and this seems to work for us. And so take your innovation and stuff it.
Right. Well, that happens because what happens over the years, something's going to win. Sometimes it's going to be, hey, we don't care about making money. We just want to play around and engineer cool stuff, which can kill a company. And other times it's like, way back when, yeah, we did great engineering, but we don't care anymore. Those guys have all, retired out, and we're really a shell of that company. But there's still hope. There's still hope if you want to see it become successful.
And you can if you work at it hard enough and long enough, at least in most cases. Now, before we get too far into it, can I pick your brain? Because
Absolutely.
in the world that I travel in, this is a very difficult place in order to make a decent living, or to make a living at all, or to continue to do it. So are you familiar with podcasts and what we do and radio shows and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I've been on about 75 podcasts in the last 3 months, and I'm starting a podcast in another month. So
good for you.
I'm not as familiar with running a podcast, but I've been on a lot of them.
And I like to say podcasts are kind of like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Some
That's
are really
true.
good, some are not so good. But I need to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'd like to pick your brain a little bit about how someone that is in this particular industry, either an independent in radio production or an independent podcaster, how they can find their own niche and kind of negotiate the minefield that is out there. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in like 30 seconds.
They have your eyes. They have your ears. They have your smile. Now all they need is a little more of your time. Make a difference in your child's life, because anyone can be a father. It takes time to be a dad.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. I hope that woke you up anyway, if you were just kind of a little sleeping away. But we've got a great guest. Barry LaBov is with us, correct?
That's right.
Yay. And he's written the book. Give us the name of the book first.
The book is called The Power of Differentiation, and its subtitle tells it all. Win hearts, minds, and market share. And that's the order you want to be in. You want to win the hearts of people so they care. Then you want to win their minds, and they go, you know what? This is brilliant. This is a wow idea. And then you know what? You'll get the market share.
It's amazing that you say that, because I found that to be true in my own management career, because I was in the restaurant business, and you have all kinds of different folks and from different walks of life that are coming there to be in the restaurant, and most of them are in college or they don't have a lot of education, or for whatever reason. And I found that there were lots and lots of general managers and people that did not bring their people together to make it work for the customer. But there's such a beautiful synergy when you can take a group of, on any Friday night, I'd have 65 people that would be on the floor, bartenders and cooks and everybody. And if I could get them to believe in themselves and each other and take pride in the work that they were doing, and know that the more successful the restaurant was, the more successful each individual would be, there'd be more money to go around, and everybody could take really a lot of pride in what they did. I took that approach from the previous guy, who had a 300% turnover. And he said, it's just the area, man. It's just the area. It's just got lots of turnover here and stuff. Turned out not to be true. So but it was so important to build that sense of teamwork and that sense of camaraderie that we're proud to work here and we're proud of the product that we produce. That isn't that kind of the bare nuts kind of the key of being successful.
Yeah, I think you have to realize if you're doing it only for yourself, that really good people are going to pick up on that pretty quickly. And they're going to go, what's in it for me? Why would I care? I think it's less about us and it's more about doing what we believe is the right thing and being smart about it, of course. And then really explaining why you're doing it and bring people along the way. Look for what people have as talents or uniquenesses and help them really blossom and grow. And if you do that, I think a lot of times, not every time, a lot of times they're going to go, wow, this is really great. I'm growing as a person. I'm appreciated. I'm doing something I'm proud of. Why would I ever leave?
Exactly. And I always told the people that worked with me that if we lose a good employee, a key employee, it'll take 5 to 7 people to replace that employee, because that's how important they are. At least in my frame of mind, and stuff. So, anyway, I want to talk to you about you. I'm going to hire you right now to
Sure.
to come in and talk about. First of all, you have a podcast starting in a month or so. What are you going to call it?
It's going to be called Difference Talks, because if you're unique, that difference talks. But it's also talking to people about differentiation. So it's Difference Talks.
Very cool. And what's any idea of the format? Is it going to be interview or
interview?
How you do it?
It's going to be interviews, about 30 minutes or so. A lot of really interesting people who have done unique things, mostly in business, but there will be a PGA Tour pro or two that will be on it. There will be a few famous authors who will be on it. Unique individuals like that can share things, maybe a baseball player, famous player or two here or there. So kind of an interesting show, but it's all about people making a difference and inspiring the team around them.
Which is really cool. Any idea who the baseball players are that they could have?
No, I can't divulge that yet, but
I
can tell you that the PGA Tour player might be one of the former Rookie of the Year winners on the tour. So he's really a good player.
What's interesting about PGA guys is that my dad was a scratch golfer. My uncle was a scratch golfer. My nephew was my cousin was a scratch golfer. And what I mean by scratch golfer is they don't have a handicap. Mm-hmm. So they're really good, and most of them are subpar. But what they all found was that there's a mental component to being on the PGA Tour that far exceeds the physical gifts that somebody might have.
That's right.
How do you help somebody and work with somebody that is? I mean, that is the key. There was a professional golfer that was a friend of my dad's. His name was Don Bees. And he played in this goes back to the 70s and 80s. And he said, if I cut one stroke from my round, it would have meant $150,000 a year for me.
Right.
That's how do you deal with that kind of pressure?
Well, you know what? It's how do you deal with that kind of pressure? And then how do you deal with that kind of failure, if you want to call it failure, because you're sitting in your hotel room crying because you missed that 1 3-foot putt? And how do you not beat yourself up? How do you not, get so upset that you want to break every club in your bag? I mean, that's you've got to be a special human being who can have the resilience to come back and come back and come back. And that's the PGA Tour pro that I'm going to interview was on the tour only for like a year when he won, of course, because he was a rookie. But prior to that, he had tried to get onto the tour for over a decade.
Yeah.
And he just never gave up. And all of his friends are giving up. They're dropping like flies left and right. And this guy just keeps going, and he goes and goes. Now, here's the problem. And you're really bringing up an interesting point, Kevin. Until he finally made it, wasn't he the guy that was messed up? I mean, weren't his friends right when they were saying, look, give it up. You're not going to do it. Give up like me. Come on, what's wrong with you? Go get a job somewhere. Get a real job. But then he made it. So you have to have that determination, that stick-to-itiveness, as they call it. And it's unbelievable. And you're right. The difference between that successful tour player who's making millions and the pro who's down the street who is phenomenal, in our eyes, we can't see it, but they can tell. They know the difference. And that pro down the street who just plays great, he knows he cannot make it on the tour. He knows it because he doesn't have something, and he knows what that something is, whatever it is.
It's that 10-foot putt that you need to make the cut, which is as important as winning the championship. Because if you don't make the cut, you don't make any money. And so you miss that putt. So and baseball players the same thing. 70% of the baseball player loses, even if he's a 300 hitter, which is they don't do that very much anymore. So I'm excited for you. I think that's going to be a great show to really uplift people, and give them and show them what people can do if they stick to it. I've told my people and the people around me that the worst thing that I could do would be to quit. That's the only way that I lose, is if I quit. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that. Yeah, I think determination is pretty amazing. I was a musician when I was growing up, so I was in rock bands and had music that sold well under 1 million copies, Kevin, well under. And I had a lot of friends who honestly had a lot more talent than me. And I would just go, oh my gosh, that drummer is so brilliant. Oh my gosh, that singer is a genius. Oh my gosh. But at one point or another, they just said, look, I don't want to try to make it in music. I might want to be a music teacher. I might want to go, sell something, sell something at a store somewhere. I don't want to go through this. It takes a certain person. I'm not going to say a better person. It is a special type of person that's willing to go and not give up. And that's what it's all about.
And that is in really every walk of life, from an actor to a musician to an author. That the first book that you put out may sell 115 copies, which the average is like 200. And you're like, I spent 2 years working on this and nobody wants to buy it.
Yes.
But there's an inner drive. Where do you think that inner drive comes from?
I think you've got to, at some point, understand what's important to you and be at peace with yourself that, look, I want to do X. I want to, if it's writing a book, I want to express myself. I want to do this. And I also think, Kevin, it's important to not connect worldly things to what's in your heart. So as an example, with my book coming out, I do not have a goal purposely of selling thousands upon thousands of copies. I don't have a goal. I've had friends say, oh, is it going to be a bestseller? And I go, no, I'm not writing the book to sell millions or thousands of copies. I want to have this book come out and influence people. And if it can change the world for a few dozen leaders who represent hundreds of thousands of people, again, ultimately over 1 million people, then I did my job. So I think we sometimes, and I've been guilty of this, we sometimes get judgmental. And it's like, if my book doesn't sell over 10,000 copies, it's a bad book. And the reality is that's not true. I had songs, Kevin, again, I mentioned that I was a musician, but I had a song that a very famous rock band stole. They stole it, and it was a big hit. And, I heard it on the radio. I had sent them that song many times because I thought it was perfect for them. And one day it's on the radio, and it wasn't verbatim, but it was, pretty darn close to my song. And my co-writer listened to it, and he goes, my gosh, that's our song. And the thing is that at that point in my life, I was a pretty poor young kid, and I was not going to be able to fight somebody with attorneys and all that. And I thought, I'm not going to worry about it. It happened, and I'm going to write more things. I'm going to be creative in other ways, and I'm going to let it happen, because at this point, I'm David and they're Goliath. So I'm not going to win that battle. So what I'm not going to do also is get bitter about it. And I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. I'm just going to move forward and write more songs.
At least, if nothing else, by them putting it out and it becoming a hit, proved that you had the chops to do it.
That's right. That's right. I had the chops, but I didn't get the money, but I had the chops.
Which is often the case.
Yeah.
By the way, we're talking with Barry LaBov. Oddly enough, he is the owner, CEO, founder of LaBov, and they talk about, and they work with companies to differentiate them from the competition and to make them better. And they'll come in and they will make your life, if you're the CEO or the owner, they're liable to make your life a little uncomfortable, because they're going to look in your underwear drawer and see exactly what you got going on in there. So we need to take a real quick station. I'm sorry I said that. We need to take a quick station break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We're talking with with Barry LaBov as he shakes his head. Like, how the hell did you get into radio? We're talking about his company and what he does, and how really you get into a lot of areas that a lot of people don't really think all that much about. They just kind of go about their day-to-day stuff, and you just kind of you open the book for them so that you can say, this is what you're perceived to be doing from the outside, and this is what you think you're doing on the inside. And that sometimes, or most of the time, they're not the same, are they?
No, they're not the same. And I do have to say that it has been, at least every single time, a very positive experience with the leaders of the company, the CEO, the C-suite, because we determine what they are doing, and in that determination, but through that discovery we do, it's things they've already put a lot of money into, lots of effort into. We're just shining a light on it. One person said, don't hide the light. And that's what we are trying to do. We're trying to find the thing that has been hidden, and we're opening it up. We're opening up the opportunities, the positive outcomes. So ultimately, as we work with CEOs and leaders, much of the time they say it's the highlight of their career. So it's not really like we're coming in and they're going to go, oh boy, this is going to be horrible. Oh, it's terrible. It's mostly like they're coming in. I don't know what they're going to find, but if they think they can find something, that's great. And then we take them, as we say, from why, why are you looking at this? Why do you think this is special, to wow? We take them from why to wow, which is looking at what they do and how they do it uniquely. And they go, wow, why aren't we? celebrating that? Why aren't we sharing that with the world? And that's what we help them with.
Changes their perspective.
Absolutely. They're so close to what they are doing, they don't see the beauty of it.
We're all that way. We really are. And I'm really excited for you to start your podcast. When you start your podcast, you'll have to come back and we'll preview it if you would.
I would love it. And I'd love you to be on. I think it'd be fun if you have time.
I have I don't know, but I'll make time because it's important. Because Barry, it's like when we're talking about podcasts and radio shows. I've been doing this for 20 years. I do independent because I don't want somebody to tell me what I can do. As a company owner, you
Right.
run your company the way that you feel in your heart to run your company.
Right.
In a positive way. If you look at your leadership team, they all look happy and there's a lot of them because you delve into a lot of different things. And one of the things that is happening in the broadcasting industry is there's a lot of shows out there, but there aren't very many really good ones, and there's a lot of podcast fade. You know what that term is?
Yeah, I do. Isn't it 95% of all podcasters give up by, 2-3 months, or it's bad because they just get tired of doing it. And then there are the rarities like you that keep going. And that's part of that determination we talked about. But many of the podcasts I've been on, I know that within months or certainly a year or so, they're not even going to be in existence.
And I tell people I have no choice. This is what I choose to do. I love to have people like you on who are positive in nature, that are working to change the planet, one person or 1 million people at a time. And that is, there's not enough of that. There's not enough of us doing that. And I'm hoping that there'll be more and more over time. But so far, I've been very, very blessed and very fortunate. I get to talk to some of the coolest people on the planet. I'm now on the Brushwood Media Network, which they tell me I have 1 million listeners a month with that and with all the other stuff that I'm doing. So I can't quit now. I was telling one of my associates the other day, I said, look, even if we quit and did nothing further, we're out there. There's no way I can stop it now. And we're very fortunate for doing that, but we need to make the next step. How would you suggest I make that next step?
Well, I think you have to determine what's your goal in anything you do. In your case, what is your goal? And if it's to monetize, I think that's a tough thing in podcasting because a lot of people that try to so-called monetize, make money, come off like they're trying to push people to do things as opposed to offer something that's so valuable that people are drawn to it. And I think that's a tough thing. I think that's really tough. So I think what you're doing is great. You're making a difference. And that's why people listen to you. That's why you have 1 million listeners in a month. You're bringing something to people. You're giving them something. And, could you offer something more to them? Could you, as an example, have more access or allow more access to you? That's a possible way to do that. Are there appearances where people want to pay for you virtually or in person? There are options for you because you're making a difference. And if somebody says, hey, I want a little more Kevin, you could do that.
Tell you
like a little more cowbell.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Being a former musician like you are.
Right.
But that's one of those things. It's like when I started doing this, well, first of all, I did a radio show in Seattle in 2003. But when I started the podcast in 19, it was like, I'd get a listener, maybe two. And one of them was my sister and maybe my brother and stuff.
Right.
And over time, it's continued to grow and grow and grow. But now it's to a point where it's like, is it because of me, the superstar, or is it because of the content and the material and the guests I bring on? I suggest it's because of the content, material, and the guests I bring on. And yes, I ask good questions and occasionally say something funny. But by and large, it's about taking care of people and trying to bring people together because I believe that we're all one and we need to work together to achieve more with us. So if I can get people, the bigger thing for me, Barry, is to have someone like you who can then talk to our audience that we are creating together and to create something great for them to listen to and to take that into their own lives. Doesn't matter if we'll never meet them or know what they think or who they are. It's important that we give them a positive thing for them to look at so that they can make changes. As an example, one of the things that I've learned here today is never quit.
Right.
Continue doing what you're doing and believe in what you're doing, and maybe you'll be successful, maybe not, but you will always be moving forward if you never quit. And that's an important rule, isn't it?
I think it's really important. And you can have a good life and never quit at the same time, not necessarily become, the richest person on earth. It's you're not going to quit. You're going to follow what you believe in. You're going to have others around you that you embrace on the journey. So it's not you against the world. And you're making a difference. And there's so many different ways we can help others. And that's what you're doing here with your broadcast. You're out there helping people. It's about being positive. It's getting away from, any of the negative clutter and interference that's out there and talking about things that, maybe aren't exactly what somebody wants to hear one day or another. But a lot of times, it starts to sink in. You go, this really makes sense. And I think it's really important that in business today, that we humanize it. We have to stay away from being a commodity. And whether that's large companies or small, we're pressured to be commoditized. And that, again, is why looking at what makes you distinct, why you do what you do, the uniqueness that is a beauty. And again, don't give up on your beauty. Don't cover it up. Don't hide it. Don't ignore it. Dust it off and focus on it.
That is really sound advice. And that's a sound advice for everybody because everybody's got gifts. And fortunately, they're not all the same. There are all kinds of different gifts of what people can do and how they can do it. But if you don't follow your heart and follow through with your passion about what it is that you choose to do, then in my mind, you've wasted your life. And I don't wish to waste my life. Thank you very much.
Right.
Because
and when I was a musician, my wife and I, this is a quick story, but this is something that changed my life. We had written some songs together, and I was so excited because I had 40 appointments in New York City in a 1-week period of time to go play our songs to publishers to see if they would publish our music. And I was very excited because the first person was a well-known publisher who I thought was supposed to be a great guy and a great famous publisher of the Beatles music. I found out later he wasn't, but that's what his reputation was. So our very first day, on a Monday morning, while it was raining in New York, which is not a good time, we went to his office. And to make a long story short, we walked up the steps in the beat up building he was in. His assistant showed up. He was smoking a cigar in there. I'll still remember it. And he said, give me the tape, kid. And it was a cassette tape. So many of the people in your audience won't even remember what a cassette is, but it was a small little cassette tape. His assistant put it in the cassette recorder or cassette player, and he said, press it. So she pressed play, and after about 7 seconds, he shook his head no. She went to the next song. After about 5 seconds, he shook his head no. Went to the next song. About 10 seconds, he shook his head no. Fast forward to the final song. After about 10 seconds, he shook his head no. She popped the cassette out. He said, give the kid the tape. So I took the tape, and he said, kid, you have no talent. Give up. You have no talent. Get out of here. Give up. He said, the only thing you might be able to do is write a country song, which I thought was ridiculous that he said that. I said, okay. So I walked out, and I didn't even have to open the door in his office. I walked under it basically because I felt so small, and walked down to the street. And I said to my wife, I said, if we hurry up, we can get the first plane back to Indiana. And she said, why? And I said, well, I have no talent. I've got to give up. This is, it's obvious I have no talent. And she said, oh, silly. That's just one person's opinion. Now, this is the true story, Kevin. We went to our next appointment, and it was Billy Joel's publishing company. So I was still in a horrible frame of mind. I was depressed.
Sure.
And I walked in, and I handed the guy my cassette tape, and he played through all 4 songs all the way. And he got done, and I stood up and I said, I'll take my tape. And he said, why are you acting like this? He said, I like your songs. I'm going to publish one of them. I said, really? And he said, what's wrong with you? And I said, I just went to this other guy. His name is George Pincus. And he said, I have no talent. And he said, Barry, he says that to everybody. And he did not publish the Beatles music. He tried to steal it. He's no good. Why are you listening to people like that? So here's what's the rest of the story. So he did, this person did publish my song, which is great. I'm happy he did. The next 38 appointments were nice and pleasant, but nothing came of them. Nobody offered me anything. So the first person told me, quit, you have no talent. The second person said, these are great, and I'm going to publish one. And the next 38 were handshakes and, hey, nice to know you, come back next time. That's what life is about. So you have to draw your own conclusions. Do you quit after the first time? Or do you just stick with it? And then after the next 38 that you get nothing, do you just give up then? So that to me is what we have to do. We got to keep going.
We are lucky, ladies and gentlemen, to have Barry with us today, because I'm going to throw a question at him when we come back from this break. And it's about, and if you are in sales, if you are thinking about being in sales, you're going to get confronted with something that is called the cold call. And we're going to talk about that when we come back, because so many salesmen fail because they don't do this one thing. We'll be right back.
A lifetime of savings can disappear overnight. Millions of dollars are stolen every day from unsuspecting older adults by family members, caregivers, and trusted professionals. If you suspect financial exploitation, call the Elder Care Locator at 1-800-677-1116 or go online to the National Adult Protective Services Association to be connected with help in your area.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And we have Barry LaBov with us. He has got a company, and that company's highly, did I say highly successful? It is very successful at what he does. And what he does is he helps other people be successful, which is, I can't think of a better thing to be than to be a company that is founded on the principle of helping others be successful. I think that's pretty cool. And at the same time, helping the employees work together and everybody to learn, perhaps for them, a brand new way of being that can translate into some marvelous things for people, and they can go home and not have to kick the dog sometimes. And that's really, or kick the wife, whatever, whatever. I wouldn't want to go there. But one of the things that we were talking about, as you were going around New York, and you had, it just stuck in my head that one of the biggest issues that salespeople have today is something called the cold call, where people will go, I was a district sales manager, and I would have guys that would go talk to somebody and they'd say no, and it's like, nobody loves me, they hate me. How did you get through those 38 people and continue to believe in your success?
Well, I tried my best to have warm calls where somebody knew somebody and could connect me. And then I would say, hey, so-and-so recommended that I talk with you. And I am a big fan of yours because I know that you did such and such and blah, blah, blah. Because I did. I studied up on people so that they didn't think, here's some lazy guy pushing them. But I will tell you that trying to get into New York City was rough. And there was a very, very famous publisher named Erwin Schuster. And Erwin had a receptionist, and here's one of my secrets. Okay. She had a receptionist who was pretty nasty to me. And I realized that Erwin was probably a really nice pussycat of a guy, but he had this really tough receptionist. And this receptionist was, she was tough. And I would call her up, and I had my, Midwest accent talking like this. And she'd go, listen, kid, we don't have time for you. We don't want to talk to you, kid, like this kind of stuff. So one day I said to my wife, I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put on my East Coast accent, because I am from Philadelphia, so I know how to talk with an East Coast accent. And I said, I'm going to see if I can get in to meet Erwin. So I call over, and she goes, Erwin Schuster. And I go, is Erwin there? And she goes, who is this? I go, Barry. She goes, Barry who? I got Barry LaBov. She goes, hold on. So she comes back and she goes, Erwin's going to lunch, but he'll be back in half an hour. I said, well, you know what? I'll tell him you are the best and you take great care of him. And all of a sudden she goes, oh, sweetie, you're so nice. You're such a sweetheart. I'll make sure. And I'll tell you what, he always likes to go and get a cup of coffee later. So I'll tell you what, I'll make sure that he's back at 12:30 so he can get your call. So I made friends with the reception person, and I told him when I got on. He goes, how'd you get in here? And I said, well, she's phenomenal. She said, I heard her laughing in the background, loving it. And that's what I did. I made friends with her. And one thing I have to say, and this is a secret, I guess, but I do this all the time. If I'm talking to the person who's answering the phone or the assistant, I treat them with honor and dignity. I don't treat them like there's some merchant or some person that's running around and just, running errands. I mean, these are important people. And I always thank them. If I get an email and they go, so-and-so's not available, I go, look, you're great. Thank you so much. And they love it, because you know what? A lot of times they don't get that kind of treatment from anyone. So that's what I do. I treat the receptionist, the assistant really nice. I appreciate them. I ask them if they could do this. They'd be heroes for me. And you know what? Sometimes they come through.
The interesting thing about that is that these people who are mean to folks trying to call in, the reason they're that way is because they love their boss and they're working to protect them at all costs.
That's right.
They
are.
And so you can't argue with that, because that's what they're being paid to do.
That's right. They are the gatekeepers. And if you get into a dogfight with them, they'll tear you apart. But if you treat them specially and let them know you appreciate them and show great honor to them, you have a chance.
Yeah, you never treat, and one rule of thumb for me is never treat anybody as less than.
Right.
Everybody is equal to you, even if it's I can't even say even if, because there is no even if. We're all equal. Right. And we need to take care of each other. So, Barry, how close are you to reaching your 1 million people goal?
Well, I tell you the truth, Kevin. If I added it up, I'm probably 3/4 of the way there, but I have not added it all up. And the reason I haven't is because it's a great goal, but we're going to surpass it. That's why. So we're going to get there and pass it and then some.
Well, when you think about 1 million people, when you've got 8 billion, which it amazes me that in our society, when you say 1 billion versus 1 million, people don't really know what the difference is. Well, just in case you were wondering, $1 million is $100,000. So put that into your bucket. And if you ever get $100,000, but $1 billion is is $999 million, or 1,000. Fortunately, I'm not a mathematician, but it's a lot bigger.
It is a lot bigger, maybe 1,000 times bigger.
Hey, that's what I wish I would have said. That would have worked out so much better for me. But 1,000 times more than 1 million. And there are people that you can touch, and I'm hopeful that your goal is met. and that you can touch as all of those people
Thank you.
and even more. Because I think you are a very talented guy. You got a very talented team that works with you, and they're very dedicated, aren't they?
They're great. They're great.
And
I love them.
that from a boss is something that's really cool. When you can look at everybody and say, I wouldn't trade you for anybody in the world, because and your employees will protect you like no other if they believe you have their best interest at heart.
That's right.
So it's really cool. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you, sir, and they say, I want to hire that guy, how do they do it?
My company's email address and website is LaBov.com. So go to www.labov.com. You can look me up there, send me a message. There's information on my book. It's going to be released June 25th. It's a great place to go to as far as the website. I have a personal website, barrylabov.com. Even have some of my music on there, a little more information on my podcast and books. And there's some free gifts for anybody that's listened to me on a podcast. So go to either one of those sites and start up a conversation. I end up having such great conversations with people just because I've been on a podcast.
Exactly. So if you want to go to either one of those, just tell him that you listen to him on Positive Talk, and he will accept you with open arms.
Absolutely, I will.
So now, and we haven't even gotten into this, Barry. How many books have you written?
Well, I wrote a dozen parable books, not terrible, but parable books, story books. And I wrote a couple of books prior to that. So, I've written 14, 15 books, but this is my major opus. This is the one, and it's called The Power of Differentiation. It's about 200 pages. It is not my memoir. It is filled with stories of successful people at different companies, small, large, new, and old, who looked at their companies through different eyes and really appreciated the magic they had, and then lifted up and elevated the people around them.
Which is really cool. Now we've just got a minute or so left, minute and a half, but I wanted to ask you real quick, and it's probably not a minute and a half question, but with brick and mortar businesses being in a spot of trouble, what do you see the future as?
I think that you have to, if you have a brick and mortar business, you have to make sure your experience is your brand. People, if they have a bad experience walking into a store, and this can go for online as well, but walking into a store or some physical place, then they will walk out and go, I will never go there again, despite whether or not you offer great product or service. So more than ever, the experience must be what your brand represents.
And because and I know this for a fact, and verify it for me, one complaint turns into 10, where one good experience turns into 2.
Right. And here's a secret, if you have an issue, if your customer is unhappy, and instead of ignoring that customer, you listen and you help fix it with them, here's a fact: they will be more loyal to you than if there never was a problem in the first place. And it's because they got to know you. They saw that you care, and they want to be with you now because, you know what? You're not perfect, but wow, you were there for them.
There's a company that my dad worked for 30 years, and John W. Nordstrom was the founder of that company. And the whole difference between what his company did and others was, regardless of what you say, they're going to take it back.
Right.
And that could be, he had pants that were worn through in the thigh,
Right.
and they would take it back because that was he called that advertising money. So, and look at them now. And now they're in the process of having to reinvent themselves again because brick and mortar are changing.
That's right.
Barry LaBov, thank you so much for being here, sir. I really appreciate your time. And I look forward to seeing you again. And when the book comes out or comes close, I would love to have you on again, and we'll talk specifically about the book.
Kevin, you are a pleasure, and it's an honor to be with you. Take care of yourself.
I have to, and you do the same. I'll be right back. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin@kmmedia.pro.